Chop, the original Guillotine League podcast. Everything you need to know to avoid the chopping block. Chop is brought to you by GuillotineLeagues.com. Now, your host, Paul Charchian.
Hello and welcome to Chop, the Guillotine Leagues Podcast. I am Paul Charchian. Joining me today, my Fantasy Life compatriot, Fantasy Life's college football maven, and Fantasy Football Weekly co-host Thor Nystrom. Hey, my friend.
How you doing, Charge?
Great to have you here. Excited to see you in person on Friday. That's going to be fantastic. Fantasy Football Weekly is our sister podcast. We highly recommend that you listen to that for Thor as well. But today, it's all guillotine all the time on Chop, Thor. We're going to talk about the players we never end up drafting in guillotine leagues.
Yes, and can't wait. I'm going a little bit off the grid here. I think I got some scandalous takes.
Yes,
I'm excited to get into it.
You do. You've got some contrarian takes, and I can't wait. Before we get to that, I want to mention this. In Tuesday's Chop, I talked about how I had started to drop Puka Nacua down my rankings. And Thor, I want to get your feel for this. Due to Matthew Stafford's lingering back injury, I feel like I've had to start moving Puka down. I don't want to overreact to anything, and here we are just mid-August, right? There's still plenty of time for this thing to get right. But if you've got to make a draft decision today, I got to move Puka down. I've had him as high as, I think, 3 or 4. I've got him slotted right now at 9. But Thor, it's looking really dicey. I'm in an internal draft right now where he went 17. Puka went 17. So you tell me, where on the line between 9th pick for Puka, which is where I've got him right now, and 17, where he just went in a real draft inside of Fantasy Life, filled with people who know what they're doing, where on that spectrum do you think Puka Nacua should be today for guillotine specifically?
Guillotine specifically, I would go towards the back end of that range, right? Like, you can't assume the amount of risk that you can in other formats in guillotine leagues. Charges, all you have to do is not be last place. One easy, in any given week. One easy way to be last place in a given week is if your first round pick isn't playing, right, in the first couple of weeks. And then a longer term season thing for the Rams, I think to keep an eye on as well, beyond Puka's sort of health situation, is the health situation of Matthew Stafford. And he's in and out of it. They have this mobile van that has like a cryo or something in there that he goes and he lays in or whatever. The Rams, acquired a second first-round pick for the next draft from the Atlanta Falcons this past April when they traded out of the first round. I believe pretty strongly that the reason the Rams did that was to draft Matthew Stafford's successor next April. I think this probably is going to be the last time that we see Matthew Stafford in Los Angeles. And if the season starts to go a little bit wayward, you wonder what they'll do with the veterans there if they start playing for draft positioning, knowing that they need to move up the board for a quarterback, and they have the Atlanta pick as well. But yeah, I share some of your trepidation on Puka, specifically with regards to guillotine leagues.
Yeah, and I think part of the concern is, okay, Stafford doesn't need a lot of training camp. He's already had 17 of them, or however long he's been in the league. He's got a lot. So, if I can just get him upright for week 1, that might be good enough for Puka. But then there's Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, we're not dinging Malik Neighbors that much, and he's got bad quarterbacking, and Puka would be just as much of a focus of the Rams as Malik Neighbors would be. I think Dwayne McFarland tweeted about this, and I thought this was a salient point. So, part of me is torn. I feel like, could Jimmy Garoppolo get Puka Nacua to be requisite of pick 9? Yeah, maybe that would be okay, but that's not my ideal scenario here. And we're going to have to keep watching Matthew Stafford for sure, Thor.
Yeah, and in guillotine leagues, churches, like in regular leagues or dynasty leagues in particular, you're shooting for upside. You're thinking more about upside when you're making the selections. In guillotine leagues, I'm thinking just as much about protecting myself from risk. Right. Yeah. Again, you want to do is not be last place in any given week. One way to do that is avoiding risk as best you can. That's a risky asset, Puka Nacua, to be picking as high as you're going to have to pick him to bring him home. So I would probably, unless I can get a discount on him, we're sort of talking about a sticker price discount. You know, if your league members all thought this way and he ends up filtering down the board and you get to a point where it's like, oh man, I have to take him. In good conscience, I can't pass on him at this price point. But outside of that, I'm not hopping anyone in line for Puka Nacua in a Guillotine League.
GuillotineLeagues.com, 3 ways to play. You can play in a free public league if you just want to try out a Guillotine League, free private leagues if you want to play with your friends, or paid leagues for prizes if your state supports it. My Guillotine specific rankings are also available at fantasylife.com. And Thor, if people want to use a promo code to get 20% off Fantasy Life Plus, what could they do?
They could type in Thor, THOR, for that 20% off.
What if I've got a 3-character maximum on all my promo codes?
Yeah, then you might be in trouble. But type in Tho and then put the R there.
Let's just see if it works. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. Deal. Yeah. Let's talk about our blacklist players. Now, in some cases, these are players, we've done many Guillotine drafts, you and I, Thor. These are players that never seem to find their way on our roster. It could be because we actively dislike them. Could be because just the ADP is wrong. Could be because of injury concern. Could be because of age on both ends of the age spectrum. It could be opportunity concern, whatever it is. Guys that we never end up drafting for one reason or another. And we've got 10 players that we're going to go through and we're going to explain why we don't draft them. And I want to put up some conversational guardrails here, Thor.
Yeah, please.
We are not going to waste your time by saying, well, you know, I never draft Kimani Vidal, who we were optimistic about this time last year, or like Geno Smith. These are all guys going in like the top half of drafts. These are all guys that are being drafted as a starter for your team, but we are not taking in our Guillotine drafts. So everybody's going like top half of Guillotine drafts. And as we get into our 10 blacklist players, and we'll start with you first, Thor, this segment presented by GoPuff, the instant commerce platform that delivers everyday essentials right to your door. Thor, you're coming out of the gate firing bullets, my man. Tell people who your first blacklist player is.
My first blacklist player is a 2-time NFL MVP who should be a 3-time NFL MVP, and it's one of my favorite players in the NFL, Lamar Jackson, who is 23rd overall in the Guillotine, the AP, and QB2 as well. But quarterbacks in charge, we talked about this, going back to a philosophical thing. It is not advisable. Oh.
Yeah, we had a brief freeze up. We can restart. Thor, I think you can restart from that intro that I gave you if you can. Well, Matt, this is your call, not mine. Yeah. Okay, good. Yep.
What, tell me when you want
I did not say his name. Yeah, I did not say Lamar Jackson's name. I just said, you're coming out firing bullets.
Okay, yeah. You just want me to go, like, whenever?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, just pick it up right from there.
All right. Yeah, we're going to go with the 2-time NFL MVP here at Charchian, a guy that probably should have been a 3-time NFL MVP in Lamar Jackson, quarterback for the Ravens. Now, a philosophical thing, you talk about Guillotine Leagues, not super advisable to push up the price point of the quarterbacks in your initial draft. And Lamar Jackson is going 23rd overall. You look at the Guillotine ADP on fantasylife.com right now, and also QB2. Of course, last year he was QB1 in fantasy points per game. That was the first time he had done that since 2019. And we could go through all the different stats. He led the quarterbacks in rushing. He had 4,172 passing yards, et cetera, et cetera. And he could end up as QB1 again in fantasy in 2025. That is not my argument against putting the kind of draft equity into him in Guillotine Leagues that you would need to acquire him. My argument here, it's both I don't like overpaying for quarterbacks or even paying their sticker price, as far as the ADP in Guillotine Leagues. But in particular, am not going to do that for a quarterback who plays a gauntlet schedule early. Now let's get into it with Lamar Jackson. Utterly ludicrous schedule here to start. You open at the Bills, you host the Lions, and you play at the Chiefs in the first 4 games. The guy that ends up spending the early second-round pick on Lamar Jackson that needs to in your Guillotine League to get him, that roster is going to be chopped in September. Those are the first 4 games. They're games in September. If you want Lamar Jackson on your Guillotine League team, you get him late September, early October, when the guy who overpaid for him in your draft ends up getting chopped, this is not an argument against Lamar Jackson. It is an argument against giving premium draft equity to a guy who in the first month playing this gauntlet schedule, if he has a bad week in one of those games, that is going to make you susceptible to getting chopped. I would rather put my draft equity into skill guys, let someone else overpay for a guy like Lamar Jackson. He runs into a tough game, one of these over the first month of the season. That guy's roster is going to get chopped. So it's not a guy that I want in the initial draft. It's a guy I'm targeting later on when I have gotten through, and all of a sudden we're into October, we're into November, that I'm going to be targeting on waivers.
You know, Thor, I think you and I are going to have to disagree on this one to some degree. Now, I don't have Lamar Jackson number one like a lot of people do. I have Jalen Hurts and I've got Josh Allen 1 and 2. So I'm a little further south on Lamar Jackson, but not as far as you are. What I love about Jackson is 2 legitimate ways to make sure you don't get dud games. Of course, the rushing and the receiving. He proved last year to be a very capable passer in ways that he hadn't in prior years. And then, of course, you get the rushing upside. Now, what he doesn't give you is the goal line touchdowns that Allen and Hurts do. And that's a real differential. And that's why I don't have Lamar Jackson 1 or 2. I've got him 3rd on my list. Agree that I usually do not pay that premium price for a quarterback. I will go to war with a 3rd-tier quarterback much later in the draft. But Lamar Jackson's a very safe guillotine pick. And as for that schedule and the seasons, I always hesitate to give this out, Thor, because the seasons never play out the same way. But in the first 6 games, the Ravens don't play a single team that ranked in the top half of fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position last year. They were all teams that were worse in the bottom half, allowing more fantasy points. Every season's different, and a lot of those defenses are going to get better. You mentioned Detroit. Detroit's secondary is going to be way, way better this year. So I'm listening, but I'm not. I think I would still take Lamar Jackson. Thor, that's our first of 10 blacklist players presented by GoPuff. In fantasy drafts, 2 minutes per pick feels like a lot of waiting around. And some people, like my Chop co-host Brian Johnson, use all 2 minutes on every single pick, and that kills me. Even so, that is not enough time to leave the house and go refill your energy drink supply. And Thor, do not start ignominiously licking the inside of your can of Monster to get that last drop. Instead, call in GoPuff. They have snacks, drinks, everyday essentials delivered in as fast as 15 minutes. And you get 60% off your first order when you use promo code FANTASYLIFE60. FANTASYLIFE60 for 60% off. Thousands of products from your favorite national brands and your local favorites as well. Order from your couch, desk, tailgate, no lines, no traffic, no leaving the game. GoPuff is the go-to instant commerce platform that delivers everyday essentials right to your door in minutes. All right, Thor, my first player on my blacklist is Kansas City tight end Travis Kelce. So I want to talk about a few things with Kelce. He's 35 years old. The drop-off last year in his performance was tangible. And get this, Kelce, the most chopped tight end last year, and the 11th most chopped player at any position last season. Now, in fairness, you have to be pretty good to get chopped that many times because it means teams are still starting you, but you still don't want to be the most chopped player in Guillotine Leagues history, which he was last year at the position. If his production continues to erode similarly, if we get a drop off again like we had last year, we're in real trouble with Travis Kelce. And then compounding matters. For the first time in years, Patrick Mahomes has actually got a surplus of viable targets, at least when Rashee Rice gets through whatever suspension he gets. And assuming everybody comes back healthy, we got virtually every receiver's dinged up right now, but Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice, and maybe even help from rookies Jalen Royals and Brashard Smith, who Royals having a great camp. People are very excited about Smith too. And one of the hardest September schedules of any player at any position for Travis Kelce, including the Chargers week 1. They allowed a league best 2 tight ends touchdowns all season. So Thor, I have not got Travis Kelce on a single Guillotine League roster.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, this exercise is about considering the ADP of these players in Guillotine Leagues against, in my opinion, the way that I see it's the first month of the season or so. That Guillotine Leagues, it's totally different than other fantasy formats where you get second, third, fourth, fifth bites at the apple at some of these guys. When the rosters get chopped, then they're back out there. I'm mostly considering the early season viability of these guys. And Travis Kelce, it doesn't even seem like, where he has become as a player and sort of the offensive environment he's in with Kansas City right now, like you were sort of alluding to, like that stuff has properly been baked in yet into his ADP. He's still being overdrafted. I'm with you on that one.
Thor, on an earlier episode of Chop this season, a couple weeks ago, Matthew Friedman made a long, detailed case to draft DeAndre Swift. You see it the other way.
I'm all the way out on DeAndre Swift. I have to be honest. Right now, he's 60th overall in the Guillotine Leagues ADP. He's RB24. And you see people making this argument of like, oh, Ben Johnson's there and DeAndre Swift, he has hold of that RB1 job, no competition. You can get him on a discount, and that was sort of what Friedman was talking about. But yeah. I see early season questions with DeAndre Swift, the acclimation back into Ben Johnson's system behind, and this doesn't get talked about enough, that sort of the rebuilt offensive line and how that's going to coalesce. They have a skyscraper second round pick that we'll see how he ends up doing in the NFL, but that might be starting at left tackle. I know people are like, oh, just automatically that offensive line is going to be way, way better. They still have a couple holes on that offensive line. We'll see how it ends up coalescing. And then I see a season-long question with DeAndre Swift about whether he'll be able to hold on to that job at all, right? I mean, he was benched the last time that he played for Ben Johnson in the Lions system. That season, the last season with Ben Johnson there with DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams led the NFL with 17 rushing touchdowns, had 262 rushing attempts. So I think this idea that DeAndre Swift's going to touch the ball every single time in the backfield for Chicago for 17 weeks, it's just not there. One of those two guys are going to be platooning with him throughout if he doesn't get outright benched again. And then the other thing, like we're sort of talking about the early season schedule, right? That's what we care about here. It's like, Charch, I sort of think of this like I love trashy reality television shows. I love Survivor and I love Big Brother. And you see a common mistake every single season on, with both of those two seasons, where you see contestants come in and they talk too much in the first couple of episodes. They're bossing people around. It's always like, that's the person that's going to get voted off. The thing, if you're going to go on to a reality show, you just keep your mouth shut the first couple episodes and you'll get through to the third episode. You get a free pass.
Because nobody cares about you. Yes.
Nobody cares. You just sort of sit back and that's sort of how, I'm thinking about it with Guillotine Leagues too. And we're trying to avoid sort of the thicket of bad schedules. Again, against sort of the ADP and the price that you have to consider there. But the beginning of Chicago's schedule, home against the Lions, home against the Vikings, at the Lions, home against the Cowboys is the first three games while you're in this acclimation into this new offense, which I don't think is going to go as smoothly as some other folks out there are forwarding. I've mentioned you, Charge, several times. I think Caleb Williams is a bad fit with Ben Johnson. I think that's going to take a while to get off the ground. Last year, Swift was fantasy RB19. I don't know that I don't believe that he will even finish that good this year. I'm a total fade on DeAndre Swift and definitely do not want to be drafting him and have to rely on him in September in my Guillotine League.
I'm going to give you a couple of DeAndre Swift stats. Last year, among starting running backs, DeAndre Swift ranked dead last in rushing yards over expectation, dead last in yards after contact, third from last in avoided tackle rate, second from last in yards per carry. He's just not very good.
Not very good.
And at the end of the day, at some point, if you're not requisite of an NFL running back or any player at any position, you just don't get the ball. And that is the fear here.
That's right. Yeah.
All right.
I was just going to say Chicago. We all thought they were going to take that running back in either round 1 or round 2 of the NFL draft. And like we've also talked about in the past on other episodes, Charge, in the first round, they didn't get access to Ashton Genty. It got taken 4 spots ahead of them by the Raiders. Then in the second round, they got beat to the punch for Travion Henderson. And that's why the thing ended up going where Chicago didn't address that till the 7th round. I believe that the Chicago Bears will be taking a running back very, very early next April.
Next year's draft, yeah.
They got to get through 1 year of this. And people they just assume, oh, Ben Johnson, DeAndre Swift's going to be the guy there and whatnot. What do we have to suggest that will be the case? And what do we have to suggest that DeAndre Swift is still good?
Not a lot. I mean? And did you just put the Bears near the top of the first round? Are you suggesting the Bears are not going to have the kind of win total that some people think?
I think the Bears are going to finish around where they always finish. I think they're going to have something like the 10th pick in the draft. And yeah, I'll go on record with it right now. I believe with that 10th or 11th or 12th pick, they will select Jeremiah Love of Notre Dame this coming April.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. You're calling a player to a draft spot for next year's draft. Very impressive. And if it were anybody else, I'd be calling BS right now. The next player that is on our blacklist, or at least mine, it's Vikings running back Aaron Jones. He was forced to do a workhorse role last year. Nobody wants to see him do that again, especially at his advanced age now. And the Vikings brought in Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason's going to get almost all of if not all of the goal line work in this offense. And he's actually really good. Among players with Mason's 234 career carries since entering the league, Mason ranks third in yards after contact behind Derrick Henry and Devon Achane, two players going no later than the middle of the second round in drafts right now. Last year, he ranked number 1 in broken tackle rate, according to Next Gen Stats. Jordan Mason's really good, and this is going to be an even timeshare. Where Aaron Jones will help you out is he's going to catch some passes. There's going to be some short dump-off stuff that's going to come from J.J. McCarthy. But overall, I don't think it's enough to salvage that ADP that you're looking at for Aaron Jones of 61.
I couldn't agree with you more, Charge, and you've been leading the banging the drum on this, and I've been right behind you. People out there, and the way that this is forwarded to the fantasy community, there has not been a proper recognition that this is going to be a 50-50 split. And like you were mentioning, some of that 50 on the side of Jordan Mason, it's going to be all the goal line stuff. Aaron Jones was horrible within the 10-yard line last year. It's a part of the reason, both the interior offensive line had to be fixed, and they did fix it, but also the implicit reason that they went out and they acquired Jordan Mason, who's now going to take all that meat and potato work from Jones. Jones is still going to do the outside the tackle stuff. He's still going to be the primary pass catching back for them. And there is a value to that, yes, but that is not reflective in the ADP, that the draft positioning that you're going to need to acquire Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is being way, way, way overdrafted. Jordan Mason is being way, way, way underdrafted. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, and we'll see, with McCarthy in college, did not throw to the backs a ton. Right. And O'Connell's system is a little bit different. So maybe we'll get a little bit more of that. But McCarthy loves throwing to the tight ends over the middle of the field. He loves taking the shots down the sidelines to the boundary receivers. We'll end up seeing with Aaron Jones. But if McCarthy continues to not throw to the running backs as much like he did his 2 years at Michigan, that will hurt Aaron Jones even more. Either way, I'm with you, Charge.
This next player that you're going to bring up is a player that I have not drafted yet in any Guillotine League drafts, and I am scared to death of putting on my team. Tell people who it is.
Cooper Kupp, I was surprised to see 61st overall in the Guillotine ADP, wide receiver 42. But this guy very clearly on the back 9 of his career, and maybe the back 3 or back 2 of his career. Like, he can already see the clubhouse off there in the distance. and now he moves to by far a worse passing environment than the one he came from, right? You have Sam Darnold playing behind one of the NFL's worst offensive lines. We know that's how you crater Sam Darnold's game, is getting pressure in his face. Seattle almost assuredly is going to be facilitating pressure in Sam Darnold's face. So this is a potential disaster, I think, there. And then in addition, you think about Sam Darnold's game. We have plenty of tape on him going all the way back to USC. He's been in the league for several years. And even last year when he was really, really good with the Vikings, his bugaboo as a thrower is he doesn't throw over the intermediate very effectively. He's really good taking the shots downfield. He has a big time arm. He's accurate down the field. Those are the throws that he's really good at, not as good attacking the intermediate sector of the field. That's where Cooper Kupp made his money over his career. The kind of player that Cooper Kupp is, that is not the kind of guy that Sam Darnold, even at the peak of both of their powers, was looking for and was going to take advantage of.
Cooper Kupp is a natural slot receiver, and so is Seattle's young superstar, Jackson Smith-Njigba. And when push comes to shove, Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to get to play the position that he's best at, and that's slot. And Cooper Kupp, I think, is either going to play out of position or be on the bench a lot more than people think. And then just as a quick aside, and I like, give me 20 seconds on this emerging young player that they've got as a rookie, Torrey Horton.
Yeah.
The opportunity for Torrey Horton. No team has more vacated targets than Seattle does. Torrey Horton, the 5th rounder, has been getting rave reviews. Give me just a few seconds on Torrey Horton. Excuse me.
You're thinking of Torrey Holt from the Rams.
I am. That's exactly what just happened. Yes.
Yeah. Torrey Horton's a really skilled player, and he fell down the draft just because he went to Colorado State. He didn't end up transferring up. He turned down a whole bunch of NIL bags from Power 4 conference schools that were going really hard after him last offseason. And then he ends up getting injured in the middle of the season for Colorado State. But he is a really, really smooth boundary receiver, Torrey Horton. He gets off even though he's on the skinnier side, certainly adequate height, he still gets off the line. You can't mug him because he's got a good release package, good route runner, good ball skills. He didn't knock anyone's socks off with his testing, but he's not a bad athlete either. And again, the ball skills, the productivity, that guy going back for years. And he's a guy that absolutely is a boundary receiver, unlike Cooper Kupp. And by the way, just speaking of the Seattle Seahawks offense, you have A.J. Barner as the inline guy who they don't want to take off the field because A.J. Barner's a third offensive tackle. Blocker. He just mauls people. And then you have Elijah Arroyo, who they took in the 2nd round, ostensibly to take over for Noah Fant, playing in the slot. Right. So this is a team that plays a lot of 12 personnel. They want the 2 receiver to be on the boundary. There's a non-zero chance that Torrey Horton is a better boundary receiver than Cooper Kupp right now. Like where we're sitting right now. And if not, certainly they're going to be deferential to their high money free agent acquisition over the offseason. So, of course, Cooper Kupp will start over him at the beginning of the season. But if you see struggles there, if you see, this different sort of stuff, like you're mentioning, Charge, I think we could see Cooper Kupp begin to lose some timeshare there and become more of a situational guy. When you go to 3 wide receiver sets, then you can put him in the slot. But again, the thing that you think about it in your mind's eye, thinking about Cooper Kupp back in the day when he was dominating there out of the slot. Again, the concepts that he's really good at, Sam Darnold has never been good at throwing those concepts. I think this is a bad fit. This was a marriage of inconvenience for both sides, right? I mean, he gets released by the Rams. It was when most teams didn't have any cap room anymore. Seattle was one of the very few teams that could sign him at that time. Certainly they needed wide receivers, but this guy is a bad stylistic fit, not only for the receiving core that they have, but with the quarterback who's now throwing him the ball.
Your sense of time is horrible. Thor, give me 20 seconds. All right, let's go to Jets wide receiver Garrett Wilson, the next guy on my blacklist. He is a good player, to be clear. Garrett Wilson is by talent one of the 10 or 12 best wide receivers in the league. Everything else I don't like. We've got an unproven offensive coordinator in Tanner Engstrad. He might be great, but the resume super thin. His play calling duties were in the XFL and way back at the University of San Diego. He's never been a play caller in the NFL until this year. Garrett Wilson's going to get no help from the other receivers on the team, and many of our Chop listeners don't even know who the other starting receivers on the Jets are. Josh Reynolds, Alan Lazard, Tyler Johnson. I mean, most of us thought those guys weren't in the league anymore, and yet those are going to be the other players on the field opposite Garrett Wilson. So some defenses are just going to play to take away Garrett Wilson and make the Jets beat you with Alan Lazard. That's something that would be totally reasonable, Thor.
Absolutely. That is what they're going to do. Justin Fields also doesn't love throwing to the tight ends. You go back, you look at his history. If I was a defensive coordinator, Garrett Wilson, you're being double teamed every single play. I mean, that's just
every
going
play.
In. Yeah. And sometimes we'll even roll more coverage over there. If I'm a defensive coordinator, I'm going to make Justin Fields prove that he can beat me in the pocket to a pass catcher not named Garrett Wilson. And the offense stinks too. So you're going to have less opportunities to score in addition to that. This is a long road for Garrett Wilson. If I was Garrett Wilson, I would start thinking about when am I going to ask for my trade. Not a good environment for Garrett Wilson. Hasn't been a good environment for Garrett Wilson for a long time, and that team's going nowhere.
So we remember, you mentioned Justin Fields. He started 6 games last year, and Pittsburgh was similar in that they had one go-to wide receiver on Pittsburgh last year, George Pickens. In those 6 games, George Pickens, wide receiver 46 in PPR scoring with Justin Fields. That's potentially a disaster waiting for Garrett Wilson.
Agreed.
All right, Thor. Speaking of George Pickens, who you got next?
Man, this is a professional segue. George Pickens up next. George Pickens, 61st overall in Guillotine ADP, wide receiver 27. I've seen a lot of arguments people make about George Pickens. He's moving into a pass-heavy offense. He's going to be playing with the best quarterback of his career. Wheels up for George Pickens, etc. But the way that I see it, this is a guy acclimating to a new offense. He's very clearly the wide receiver 2 behind CeeDee Lamb, goes without saying. And then George Pickens, you look at his first 3 seasons, he has never finished as a wide receiver 2 in fantasy. And again, I know people will say, oh, Thor, but he wasn't in as good of an offensive environment. He wasn't playing with as good of quarterbacks. Okay, fine. He was the only competent pass catcher that they had there. There was no CeeDee Lamb to suck away targets from George Pickens there. So, I mean, that's my biggest thing there. The other thing is a tough schedule to start for the passing environment for Dallas. You start with an outdoor road game at the Eagles. You have a road game against the Bears in September. And then your other 2 ones in September, home against the Packers and then the Giants. The Giants have that nasty front 7. So I mean, are the Giants a good team? No, but they're going to wreak havoc on opposing passing offenses. I just think that this could take a little bit of time to acclimate. And as opposed to sort of believing in George Pickens and doing whatever I can to acquire him in fantasy drafts in a guillotine league like this, I'm going to let someone else have him at his ADP that he's going for, and I'm going to try to pick him up off waivers later on if he indeed does not have this September, if I'm right, doesn't have the September that people think, but maybe you see a little bit of underlying signs. If he's on your waiver wire late September, early October, then go and make a bid for George Pickens. Acquire him at that time. I'm not paying the price that George Pickens is going for in guillotine leagues right now.
I'm warmer on George Pickens than you are, and here's why. Dallas's defense is going to be bad. They're going to be trailing a lot of games, and I just see a lot of volume coming. CeeDee Lamb's always going to be the first priority for defenses. Pickens does have some downfield ability. Probably, actually, he's got quite a bit on those contested catches that could end up helping him a bit. I think there's just going to be no running game for the Dallas offense of any kind. So I just think through sheer volume, Pickens is going to be okay in this format. Would I pay his ADP? Probably not quite, but I don't think I would let him drop quite as far as you would.
I think that's a boomer bust guy charge. You're talking about like the downfield utility. And I think the acquisition of George Pickens, the person it's most helpful to, it's CeeDee Lamb, because there's a spacing thing, because Pickens is so good going up and getting it. That is going to allow CeeDee Lamb more space in the intermediate to just paper cut defenses and shots for explosive plays on Yak. But I think George Pickens as a fantasy asset this year for Dallas, I think you're going to have some boom weeks. I think you're going to have bust weeks as well. When Dak Prescott's not hitting a couple dingers with him down the field in a given week, it's a guy where it leaves you susceptible in guillotine leagues early on. Again, when with the universe 18 teams there and rosters stretched thinner, you have a couple games in September where George Pickens has like the 2 catches for 23 yards. That's now we're heading into the Monday night and we have the flag next to our team. We have to monitor the scoring that night because we might get chopped.
All right, let's go to our next player on our blacklist, and that is Chicago quarterback Caleb Williams. Ben Johnson trying to perform this massive overhaul of the Bears offensive system, and there's going to be a learning curve, and that learning curve ain't coming through my guillotine team, I can tell you that much. Caleb will almost certainly be better in year 2. But when and how consistently? Remember last year, there was a stretch of games where Caleb Williams, as an NFL starting quarterback, did not score a touchdown for a month in the middle of the season. How do you do that in today's NFL? Anybody can score 1 touchdown in a month at the quarterback position. And the other thing, Thor, Caleb Williams' rushing never materialized last year. He didn't score a rushing touchdown. He only averaged 28 rushing yards per game. We thought coming out of college that his mobility would be a semi-reliable fantasy helper. That never happened. And Ben Johnson doesn't have any real NFL level experience with a rushing quarterback. See, he had Jared Goff. I mean, you're never going to run with Jared Goff. And we don't know that that's really in the system for Ben Johnson. So Caleb Williams, out to me. He is on none of my teams, and he's not going to be. Thor, I'm nervous about this Bears situation, especially through the first roughly half of the season while they're learning this offense.
Love this call. In regular fantasy leagues, I'm out on Caleb Williams at his ADP, in Guillotine Leagues in particular. When again, we're leveraging more that first month of the season, I think there's going to be all kinds of problems acclimating to that offense. I mentioned earlier that the schedule that the Bears have in the first month of the season, that's going to be another contributing factor to this. I don't want Caleb Williams as my starting quarterback at the beginning of the season at Guillotine. If you want to sort of monitor the situation from afar, I'm pretty confident in saying that the guy that drafts Caleb Williams is not going to be winning your Guillotine League, so you will see him and have an opportunity on waivers some point during the season.
All right, let's go to your final blacklist player. Speaking of Ben Johnson, a player that Ben Johnson's made pretty intriguing. Tell us about Detroit wide receiver Jameson Williams and why you're nervous here.
I'm fading Jameson Williams because the ADP, I think, has gotten out of control, and in particular for Guillotine League, 62nd overall, but wide receiver 28. And from the treetops here, so just sort of a general comment, I'm expecting there to be offensive regression for the Lions this year. I don't think I'm really going out on a limb with that after losing Ben Johnson, of course, but then also their offensive line will almost assuredly regress. You lost Kevin Zeitler to free agency. You lost Frank Ragnow to retirement. The driver of that offense has been the offensive line going back years, right? I mean, you talk about Ben Johnson, you talk about the exciting skill guys that they had. It was the offensive line that was, sort of the colossus that was sort of leading that. And now you're going to see a regression with that. I think the passing offense is most susceptible to that regression. In 3 seasons with Ben Johnson, Jared Goff averaged about 268 passing yards per game, 2 touchdowns per game. The 1 year that he didn't have them, 231 passing yards per game, 1.4 touchdowns per game in his 1 season where he did not have Ben Johnson. I think you're going to see the regression with that. One other point, Charchian, with the Lions having picked Isaac Tesla in round 3 and a local kid that they really like. You've heard a lot of hype about Tesla early on in training camp. We saw him featured in that Hall of Fame game, then in the other preseason game that the Lions have played. There is a small, so first of all, I think with the offensive regression, I think we're getting a smaller pie of offensive stats that are available for the guys on the Lions. But I think of Isaac Tesla as a guy who's going to get one of those slices. So now you think of Jameson Williams and his part of the pie, smaller pie. Now one of the pieces is going to go to someone else. I think Tesla, we have already seen them using him on manufactured touch concepts, clear out the one side of the field, send Tesla to the other one. You know who was getting those last year? Mr. Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams, his ability to win down the field as well with his speed, that's the best part of Tesla's game. So I think Tesla is coming into the kitchen of Jameson Williams. It's going to cut out a little bit more, again, of that smaller pie. And all of this, put all this together. I think Jameson Williams being overdrafted, where he's going right now, wide receiver 28, I'd let someone else have him.
Williams managed to score 7 touchdowns on just 58 receptions. If he has the same 58 receptions, that 7 is more likely to regress down to like 4, 5. That is not enough to justify the average draft position for Jameson Williams. Our final player, Thor, is Calvin Ridley, Tennessee wide receiver. You did a great job last year on Fantasy Football Weekly of explaining how Brian Callahan and offensive coordinator Nick Foles managed to 180 his season halfway through. Do you want to just tell listeners about why Calvin Ridley got so good at the end of last season?
Well, they were using him as a one-trick pony down the field kind of a guy when the best part of Calvin Ridley's game is running routes, right? And I mean, that's the short version of it.
And the X factor here is not Calvin Ridley, who in season-long formats I'm kind of interested in. In Guillotine Leagues specifically, I worry about the learning curve of Cam Ward. He's got first player taken pedigree, but 1 season earlier, Thor, Cam Ward's not going in the first, would be like quarterback 6 or quarterback 7 that would have been taken in the previous year's draft. And even very good rookie quarterbacks struggle in their first month. And in the Guillotine format, we don't have the luxury of waiting for our wide receiver to finally put up good numbers because our rookie quarterback is learning on the job. at the outset of last year in a very good and very deep quarterback class. September and October were very wobbly for Caleb Williams, Drake May, Michael Penix, J.J. McCarthy wasn't even playing, Bo Nix, all those guys. They either weren't playing or they were not consistent for the first third of the year. And we can't wait around with Calvin Ridley and just hope Cam Ward gets it all together quickly. So as interested as I am in Calvin Ridley and how much I like how they reversed course on him last year, Thor, I'm out.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. And the other thing, Tennessee in the slot receiver there is Lockett, right? The projected starter there. This is going way deep, maybe for more deeper league players, but Cam Ward loves throwing to the slot receiver. Last year, Miami had 2 boundary receivers that were at the NFL Combine. The NFL gave, long looks. I think one of them ended up getting drafted. And then you had Arroyo as well. But Cam Ward kept throwing it to Xavier Restrepo out of the slot. Why was this happening? Well, it was because first, Restrepo is reliable. At least he a good route runner, even though he's not athletic. But the other thing is a central tenet of the air raid offenses that Cam Ward has played in. It is about feeding the slot receiver. A lot of those sort of passing concepts, and that's where he invariably looks first. Sometimes it's good, sometimes paper cuts you, but sometimes it's to his detriment. That's just what he's looking at initially. I would expect him to keep going into the slot. So maybe a deep sleeper there is Tyler Lockett.
GuillotineLeagues.com. 3 ways to play, Thor. Join a free public league and just dip your toe in the water. See if you like the format. Free private leagues. You can play with up to 18 of your friends at no cost at GuillotineLeagues.com. And paid leagues for prizing at GuillotineLeagues.com. And Thor, once again, if you want all of my guillotine-specific rankings at FantasyLife.com, what is the promo code you'd like people to use?
Use promo code THOR, Thor, for 20% off.
How do you spell that?
THOR.
That's really... oh, right. Got it. The THOR.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for your help, my friend. This has been a ton of fun today.
Appreciate you, Shark.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Chop, the Guillotine Leagues podcast. We'll be back next Tuesday for more hot chopping action. Until then, everybody, have a great weekend. See you later.